Do you know what some of the most common causes of death are for Neocaridina? If you've been in the hobby for a while, then you may have some ideas, but many people misunderstand the real causes of death, leading to the wrong treatment. Like, imagine a researcher analyzes injury prevention and notices that ambulances are always present at the scene of accidents, then concludes that we should get rid of ambulances to reduce accidents. It's possible to come to some very incorrect conclusions if you don't have all the information you need. Keep watching so you can avoid making those same mistakes. As a quick heads up, this is the final part of our video series covering every aspect of Neocaridina care. We cover the basics here, and we'll be discussing more advanced aspects on our live stream at the time on the screen, so be sure to tune in then if you want to learn more. Let's get to the video.
So we're going to go ahead and jump right into water quality issues. And the reason I say water quality as opposed to water parameters is because water parameters don't tell the full story. We've talked about that a little bit, but there are types of bacteria in the water column that can be growing. There are various forms of nutrient buildup. These types of issues are not necessarily measurable by a hobbyist, but they do cause problems. Part of the reason I mention this is because some of the most common infestations that we essentially see are from poor water quality. So when you do have these nutrients, this bacteria, these microorganisms in the water column, it allows these parasites to thrive. That includes Scuderiella japonica, Monodiscus kumaki, and Hydra truncatus. Now, these are not technically harmful to shrimp by themselves. They get a bad name though, because they're seen at the same time that you have water quality issues that are stressing out your shrimp. So it looks like your shrimp die as these populations increase. That's because these organisms feed off of the microorganisms and the bacteria that are growing from all the extra nutrients in your water column. You'll start to see these little tiny white hairs of Monodiscus kumaki growing on your shrimp. They'll be wriggling around, and they do actually lay eggs in the shrimp's gills. They don't really block them until you get to an extremely large number, and you only get that way when you have really bad water quality. So these actually act as indicator species for you to know when something is not right with your water. These are much more likely to occur because you have more bacterial growth. Additionally, if you disturb the substrate, if you're adding a lot of extra fertilizer, if you're overfeeding, if you're not doing frequent enough water changes or filter maintenance, then that can lead to more nutrient buildup and then lead to seeing more Scuderiella, Monodiscus, that sort of thing. Many people do choose to get rid of them, and that's fairly easy to do with a hydrogen peroxide treatment or salt dips. But I actually have Monodiscus kumaki just in my tanks and with most of my Neocaridina, and I barely ever see it. And if I do see it, then I know that there's an issue that I'm not noticing in the water parameter testing. What we'll see on this next slide is just how common they are. So in an aquaculture setting where most of these shrimp are grown in like Southeast Asia and then imported into the US, we can see that about 72% of the females had Monodiscus on them and 48% had Scuderiella japonica. You can also see that 54% of them have Cladogonium on them. And we'll talk about that in just a second, but it is a very harmful parasitic algae that is very difficult to get rid of. Then compare that to the aquaria, like your hobbyist setting, and those percentages drop drastically, as you can see from the graph. So from, again, 72% that have Monodiscus to only 30% in an aquarium. All of this backs up the point that where you get your shrimp from matters. And if you are getting imported shrimp, you are very, very likely to have some of these organisms on your shrimp and potentially something more harmful. So it's important to be aware of and be on the lookout when you get your shrimp.
As a quick reminder, the book behind me is The Science of Shrimp Keeping, the only book that covers every aspect of shrimp care and supports that information with research citations. Get the digital or physical copy and start shrimping with confidence.
Moving on to more harmful organisms, we have predators. Now, the most common one I see is Planaria. Otherwise, there's also Hydra, there are dragonfly, damselfly nymphs, there are also leeches, and all of these can come in on plants that you buy. That's where it can be useful to have either a good quarantine procedure for plants where you treat them to try to kill these organisms off, or buying in vitro plants that have been grown in a very hygienic condition and haven't been exposed to any of these organisms. Do you want to add anything there, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I have seen all three of these issues in the last, couple of months. Like, I don't think leeches are very common in the hobby. I think it's if you're playing with stuff outdoors, especially collecting stuff, you're just leaving the door wide open for it. I think for the average hobbyist, Planaria is sort of the battle, especially in a shrimp-only tank. There's a handful of really good ways to get rid of it, so I don't actually think it's that big of an issue. The one that I am looking out for, personally, is Hydra. Individually, they literally grab onto shrimp and eat them. There's very straightforward methods to killing Hydra. The problem is that for you to notice it, it's probably already killed a ton of shrimp. Hydra really are an infestation. They go from 10 to 1,000 to holy crap, I can't even see in my tank.
I don't want to get into this technical treatment too much, but there's no planaria, there's fenbendazole, so various different dewormers that can kill some snails, but do just wipe out the worms. And so you do 2 treatments of that. So the first one to kill off any adult planaria, and then the second to kill off any leftover eggs that then hatch about 2 weeks later. While I'm on this topic, I do also want to cover a common misidentification, which is the difference between rhabdocello worms and planaria. Now, planaria have an identifiable arrowhead shape. They have these 2 little eyes on them, whereas rhabdocello worms do not have eyes, and they have a rounded head, and they tend to have more of a lighter white body that with organs that you can see inside. So be aware that there is a difference, and that the rhabdocello worms are perfectly harmless, healthy microorganisms for your tank, whereas planaria, at least for a shrimp tank, is not very desirable. Moving on, we have some more dangerous diseases that are something to be aware of. So there are a variety of Cladogonium species, what we call Clado. These are parasitic algae that can enter through either wounds or actually from the shrimp ingesting it, and then they grow out of the shell. For a while, they're feeding on the host. That's where it can be a problem with imported shrimp, because the earlier stages tend to be transparent while it's feeding on the shrimp, and then they eventually start to feed off of sunlight, and that's when they turn green, but you can't see them until that late stage of their life cycle. If the shrimp are still in unhealthy conditions, then that can be bad for them. That being said, healthy shrimp can pretty easily fight off a Clado infection and typically do not get infected. So if you have one that shows the infection, but they're in a healthy tank, then I would not expect that to spread. Although we have a video that covers a lot more about that whole life cycle, how to treat it, how to handle it, so on and so forth. The next is muscular necrosis. Now, this is a bacterial infection where the flesh of the shrimp, the inside of it, basically starts turning a milky white. It could also be called milky shrimp disease or porcelain disease. This often starts from a water quality issue, but it can become more infectious to your shrimp. That's where it's good to be aware, avoid putting any shrimp that have this disease into your tank, and look for possible causes for water quality issues if you see these. Adam, anything you want to add to the past couple of slides here?
Yeah, I have dealt with Clado. If you see shrimp with a Clado, especially if you just got your shrimp, make a level of judgment of whether or not you think the shrimp is going to make it based on the amount that you see. This is a super evident infestation, and still to me, this is not as bad as it gets. On a 0 to 10, this is a 6 or 7.5 at most. And so I guess take this picture as kind of a threshold. If you're looking at a shrimp and it has more than the picture that you're looking here, I would cull that shrimp. I don't think it's worth possibly infecting the rest of everything. I have had it ruin colonies of shrimp when the water parameters were just bad, but I think people wind up overreacting more than they should.
Moving on from diseases and talking about normal molting, and then we'll talk about molting issues after that. As you may already know, shrimp are protected by a hard shell, so they need to shed the shell to grow and also to reproduce. Molting frequency does vary throughout their life. As a newly hatched baby, they are molting every day or two, and that slowly becomes less and less frequent as they get older, to potentially about 1.5 to every 2 months by the time they hit roughly 2 years of age. When they do molt, you can expect to see them hiding or standing still and kind of just fidgeting. You may see them stretching, you may see them more in their hunched S shape, and when they do that, when they round their back, you may see a little crack that appears, and that's often just a normal, healthy pre-molt ring. After that, molting is actually a very fast process where they pretty much just pop out of their shell, and then they go into hiding for a couple of days generally while they let their new shell harden. During that time and after that time, they may go ahead and eat their molt, so be sure to leave any molt in the tank, so that way they can actually recover some of those minerals. Moving on here are various signs of molting issues. When you first get shrimp, there's a higher likelihood potentially of molting issues. If you aren't seeing any kind of shells that are left around, especially after 3 to 4 weeks, if you also are starting to see the other signs, like a molt that's stuck on a shrimp's body, and what we call Schrodinger's shrimp ring, which is this large ring that appears on the middle of a shrimp. When that happens, your shrimp has a much higher chance of failing its molt, and that's for a variety of reasons. Molting is a very stressful process, and there may be times where their hormones don't align and it just prevents them from being able to escape their shell properly. Any single shrimp has a very small chance of failing their molt, although that chance does increase with age. Now, if you are seeing more than one molt failure, that's when I would start to be concerned and start looking at other possible causes. One could be a mineral deficiency. Now, GH is useful, but it doesn't tell the full story. So you can have the right GH, but you can still not have the right levels of calcium and or magnesium in the water. You could have potentially all calcium or all magnesium, and shrimp need those along with other micronutrients to molt properly. Additionally, their diet plays a huge part. Excess calcium can actually be a problem. I found that when I started feeding extra calcium, that affected the calcium levels in the water, the GH, and I started seeing some failed molts because I was feeding calcium when I didn't need to. So if you don't have molting problems, I would not suggest adding a calcium supplement. And just make sure that they have a varied diet. The other potential issue could be a lack of cholesterol. Cholesterol is a huge one because it's actually what hormones are made from. So if they don't have sufficient hormones, then they are going to have issues molting. A small amount of boiled egg yolk is often all you would need once a week to give them plenty of cholesterol. Other things is that they are vulnerable to sudden parameter swings when they're molting. And so if you do have a large change in water parameters, either your TDS, your GH, or KH, that can cause them to be too big to escape their molt. And so they may end up stuck. We actually have an app that is called the Shrimp Tank Troubleshooter, and you can go in, put in your parameters, your normal maintenance, your feeding, and it'll help you rank what's the most likely issue for your tank so that you have a better idea of what to do moving forward to solve your issue and keep a healthy shrimp colony. Adam, do you want to add anything to this?
To me, the most important bullet point on this slide is the mineral deficiency, specifically with the ratio of calcium and magnesium. I blame that specific parameter, which is not one that we commonly measure in this hobby, on my initial failure, because all other variables told me that my water should be perfect, right? I knew that, my water at 350 TDS was on the high side of TDS, but it wasn't in the red, right? And at 7.6 pH, it's on the higher side, but not in the red. And my GH was fine, my KH was fine. You kind of looked at all those basic parameters and you're ready. What I didn't realize is that my tap water in Arizona has a really, really off calcium to magnesium ratio, and it actually favors calcium to an extreme. For my area, I remember having seen 9-to-1. To give you like a loose estimate, 2 to 4 to 1 is common wisdom. So if you're exceeding, or below that threshold, it's just probably not worth your time to use that tap water. You really should focus on using some level of remineralizer. And if you're seeing molting issues, I would suggest you, if you don't already have the test kit, to go buy a calcium test kit. Shrimply Explained has it on the website. Great calculator. Just go do the test, input the numbers on the website, and it'll just spit out that ratio for you. You don't have to do any math.
Now, we've covered general water parameter issues, water quality issues as we talked about. I have linked here an article that explains a little bit more about what causes water quality issues and how to fix it. You may also see random deaths. There are other rarer parasites and pests that you may find in the tank. And for that's where the Shrimp Tank Troubleshooter comes in. It will help you evaluate what could be potentially wrong and what's most likely to be causing the deaths in your tank. It also has a parasite identification guide that can help you through that process if you are worried about something and you aren't sure what it is yet.
Not to double jump in on this one, but I have to. This isn't a shameless plug for me, so I can speak to it without the modesty that I think Rick does. I think the Shrimp Tank Troubleshooter is a really, really, really good resource that you should use. Take somebody who knows entry-level, rudimentary knowledge, maybe somebody that would misdescribe what they're seeing to Google and get sort of the wrong, WebMD version of what to do. Having a troubleshooter that they can just go to and say, hey, this is actually already set up. It already kind of knows the context that you're going to be talking about. So you can just focus on, asking it whatever you're seeing and go from there. I think it's a good tool.
Well, I appreciate the endorsement, Adam. I did put several months into making this, and yeah, it is very, very shrimp specific. If you download this presentation, you'll have access to that link, or you can go to our website and look under the tools tab. We are doing everything we can to try to make shrimp keeping easier for you. With that, that is all we have for our presentation. If you want to stay updated on future tips and tricks, be sure to subscribe to mine and Adam's channel. Again, Adam is Old School Aquatics on YouTube, and I am Shrimply Explained.
Thank you, guys. And I look forward to talking on Wednesdays with you guys through some live streams.
Again, we will be covering this last little bit on the live stream at the date on the screen here. If you do have any questions, comments, want to interact with the community, be sure to show up there. Thank you so much for taking the time to take better care of your shrimp. We wish you the best. Feel free to reach out with any questions, and happy shrimping.